All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're breaking down a massive paradox, the complex, contrasting realities of Charlotte's booming economy and its severe housing crisis, looking right at the landscape in 2026. This is a fascinating look at what happens when a city just explodes with record-breaking success on a global stage, while simultaneously grappling with the hidden and honestly often painful costs of that exact same growth. We're literally looking at a tale of two cities here. And what makes this so incredibly compelling is that these two realities, they aren't happening one after the other. They are happening right now at the exact same time on the exact same streets. The wealth generation and the affordability crisis are totally tied together, feeding off one another in this rapid cycle of urban transformation. Here is how we're going to break this down. First, Charlotte's record economic boom. Second, a shifting real estate market. Third, the hidden ownership costs. And fourth, the widening affordability gap. Okay, let's jump straight into section 1, Charlotte's record economic boom. To really wrap our heads around the scale of this, according to the city's economic development reports, Charlotte added nearly 38,000 new jobs in 2025 alone. I mean, 38,000. That is a staggering number. They completely blew past larger peer metropolitan areas across the country. We aren't just talking about a slow, steady climb here. We are looking at a historic spike in job creation that signals Charlotte's massive competitiveness and long-term resilience. Adding that many jobs in a single calendar year fundamentally reshapes a local economy. It creates this undeniable gravity. People are packing up and moving from all over the country to fill those roles, and they bring with them new income, new demand for services, and a palpable energy that transforms the city's daily pace. It's the kind of momentum cities spend decades trying to manufacture, and Charlotte is living it right now. A huge piece of that puzzle includes massive wins like the iconic automobile manufacturer Scout Motors, who selected the Plaza Midwood neighborhood for its new global headquarters. This move alone is bringing 1,200 new, high-paying jobs in one of the state's absolutely biggest recent economic announcements. It's the exact kind of investment that cements Charlotte's reputation as a total magnet for top-tier global brands. But think about the ripple effects for a second. Injecting 1,200 high-salary professionals into a single historically vibrant neighborhood, those workers need places to eat, coffee shops to work from, dry cleaners, the whole shebang. They fuel local businesses for sure, but they also radically shift the demand curve for local housing and commercial real estate. One single corporate announcement essentially supercharges an entire zip code overnight. And Charlotte is investing heavily to make sure that growth doesn't just fizzle out. Mecklenburg County voters actually just approved a 1-cent transit tax that's projected to generate an unbelievable $19.4 billion over 30 years. That is a massive, massive commitment to the future. That money is earmarked specifically for rail construction, road improvements, and bus infrastructure. The city clearly understands that you cannot just add tens of thousands of jobs without fundamentally upgrading how people actually move around. They are physically building the pathways, the literal steel and concrete, to sustain this massive influx of people and businesses for the next half-century. Add in the massive hype of hosting the expanded 2026 FIFA World Cup, along with a newly renovated Spectrum Center, which drew nearly 325,000 guests in its reopening month alone, by the way. And it is no wonder the county is seeing $6.4 billion in annual tourism spending. Tourism alone fuels 38,000 additional jobs in Mecklenburg County. From corporate headquarters to global sporting events, the economic engine is absolutely roaring. So let's move into Section 2, a shifting real estate market. By June 2026, buyers are finally seeing a few more options. Total inventory hit 12,726 active homes, which is the highest level we've seen since November 2025. Overall, housing supply is up 9.2% year over year, and that's largely driven by a massive surge in attached housing. Townhome inventory is up over 27%, and condos are up nearly 18%. And honestly, this makes perfect sense when you consider the realities of a booming city. As land costs just skyrocket and urban space becomes a total premium, builders naturally pivot toward denser options like townhomes and condos to maximize their footprint. For buyers, this means getting slightly more leverage, more choices, and maybe a little more time to evaluate options compared to that frantic, buy-it-sight-unseen pace we had over the last few years. But because the market remains so fiercely competitive, thanks to all those new jobs we just talked about, buyers are making incredible compromises. Clever real estate data shows an astounding 76% of buyers are willing to overlook major red flags just to secure a home. I mean, listen to this breakdown. 57% would overlook pest issues, 49% would actually consider a home with mold, and 45% would still evaluate a home with structural concerns. Think about that for a second.
Would you willingly buy a home with known structural damage just to avoid missing out? People are incredibly desperate to plant their flag in Charlotte's booming soil, pushing aside common sense and long-term risk just to get a piece of the pie.
Which brings us right into Section 3, the hidden ownership costs. The traditional focus of homebuyers used to be pretty simple, right? Lock in a good mortgage rate and you're set. Your monthly payment is your payment. Well, today, buyers are being heavily squeezed by the new reality, the total cost of ownership. We are talking about the unavoidable triad of taxes, maintenance, and insurance. As a city booms, inflation and intense demand mechanically drive up property assessments, meaning your property taxes surge. At the exact same time, the cost of labor for basic home maintenance spikes because local contractors are totally overwhelmed with demand. These secondary costs inflate right alongside property values, fundamentally changing the math on what actually makes a home affordable to carry month after month. Get a load of this. According to Pew Research, home insurance costs alone have skyrocketed roughly 46% since 2021. 71% of homeowners report that their insurance premiums have increased, acting as a massive hidden barrier to middle-class affordability. It is profoundly frustrating for middle-class buyers who diligently save for years, finally scrounge together enough for a down payment, only to find themselves completely priced out by an explosive insurance premium before they even sign the closing papers. When you combine this 46% spike with high mortgage rates, soaring property taxes, and the cost of fixing those structural red flag issues buyers are desperately ignoring, the dream of homeownership rapidly transforms into a heavy, suffocating financial burden.
And that heavy burden leads us to Section 4, the widening affordability gap.
The data here is honestly pretty sobering. According to the 2025 State of Housing Instability and Homelessness Report, as redevelopment and gentrification spread across the region, a devastating 77% of the low-cost housing that was available back in 2015 was completely wiped out by 2024. The region's aggressive focus on building high-end housing and luxury apartments has systematically erased the affordable inventory that lower-income residents absolutely rely on. Entire neighborhoods have been completely transformed, actively pushing out the very workforce that helps keep the city running every single day. So, half of all renters in Mecklenburg County are now considered cost-burdened, meaning they pay more than 30% of their income just for shelter. Between 2013 and 2023, the area went from about 74,243 cost-burdened households to a whopping 107,000. And the severely cost-burdened category, those are the folks stretching their budgets to the absolute breaking point, paying more than 50% of their income on rent. That number jumped from just over 33,666 to nearly 53,900 households. To put a real human face on that, being severely cost-burdened means families are actively making impossible choices every single month. They're likely skipping meals, avoiding necessary healthcare, or keeping the heat off in the winter just to keep a roof over their heads. And for extremely low-income households, meaning those at or below 30% of the area median income, the situation is just dire. There is an absolute gap of 32,601 rental units that are simply missing from the market. They just don't exist. This is the ultimate heartbreaking contrast of the boom. Charlotte is eagerly building a $19.4 billion transit network for the future, but it is simultaneously failing to build housing for the bottom 30% of its earners. Tens of thousands of people are essentially locked out of the housing market entirely, forced into overcrowded living situations, or pushed entirely out of the county. Consequently, homelessness impacts thousands, and we really need to highlight that this crisis is highly unequal. Block residents make up 29% of the county's general population, but tragically account for 74% of its homeless population. Furthermore, in 2023, while 66% of white households were homeowners, only 41% of Black households could say the same. The affordability gap is widening at a very rapid pace, and it is disproportionately fracturing communities of color who are bearing the absolute brunt of this housing shortage. Which leaves us with this final, vital thought to ponder. As Charlotte engineers this dazzling $19.4 billion economic future, throwing open the doors for global brands and massive world-class tournaments, how exactly can it ensure that all of its residents can actually afford the ride? We've seen the incredible, record-breaking heights of this economic boom, but a city is ultimately defined by how it supports its most vulnerable. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I hope this deep dive into the data gave you a much clearer picture of the true dynamics shaping Charlotte today.